And thanks so much for joining us at Secular AZ. And again, feel free to put your name in the chat, in the webinar. Unfortunately, we are having technical difficulties with Facebook. So if you're looking for us on Facebook, unfortunately, you're not going to find us. We're going to try to get it fixed before next week. But everybody here knows that that is not the greatest threat to our democracy. White Christian nationalism is. So we are your voice. Secular AZ is your voice for the separation of religion and government. And we are a nonprofit organization. We act as your voice to elected officials all across the state and at every level. So be sure to check out all of our social media channels and like, subscribe, and share. We always have great programming, including our Friday updates from all kinds of amazing speakers, authors, historians, elected officials. And next Friday, we're going to be speaking with novelist and essayist Patrick Nathan to discuss the use of mis and disinformation and the weaponization of social media, all to promote fascism. And I can't wait. I think it's really timely, given what has happened in Oklahoma and Chaya Raichik with libs of TikTok targeting people. And then next thing you know, we've got a dead non-binary kid who was beat up in a bathroom in Oklahoma. So these folks who are obsessed with children's genitalia, which is, first of all, creepy AF, are now responsible for the deaths of these people and these children. They have blood on their hands. And it makes me sick. So I'm just really glad that all of my like-minded folks are here today, because we have one of my absolute favorite people, a champion of Arizona politics here today. Melinda Merkel Iyer has developed and managed editorial content for over 30 years, contributing to publications across a wide range of industries. Her knack for summarizing complex legislation in everyday language helps thousands of people across the state engage with public policy, mobilizing and inspiring them to become citizen lobbyists. She's also policy director and legislative analyst for Save Our Schools Arizona, where she advocates for good public policy because that serves the 1.1 million children in Arizona's public schools. Melinda is a product of Arizona public education from elementary to college. So welcome, Melinda. Is there anything that I maybe missed in your bio that you'd want to share with everybody?
No, I mean, you didn't run that past me, but it's all true. I mean, I would say thank you for having me. And, if you were on at the very beginning and you heard us talking about how some faces are more punchable than others, sarcasm and snark are one of the tools that I use to keep me sane through all the craziness of these legislative sessions.
And I have to admit, over the years, it's like solace for all of us, I think, like getting the information in a timely manner every single week to be able to, engage. The trainings that you all have done have just really been incredible. And so I appreciate you, the work that you do and everything that CEBV does. So I think you'll probably want me to share the screen now. Is that right?
That'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I put together a slide deck for y'all.
Okay.
And I have trouble with that multitasking thing. So I asked Jeannie to share her screen while I flap my gums.
Well, flap away because the screen is up and hopefully everybody can see it.
Okay. I can't see it.
Well, that's unfortunate. How do I make that happen?
I'm not sure.
I don't know either. Let me see. You guys can't see it?
No,
Okay.
go to there should be a green box at the bottom of your screen that says share screen.
Yeah.
There
you
you
see
go.
it now.
Nope.
Okay.
It's
I
coming.
pushed it.
There
I
it
just
is.
operator error as usual. Okay, Melinda.
That's what we love to see. So, hi, I am Melinda, one of the co-founders of Civic Engagement Beyond Voting. We are here to help you exercise your voices, and we're the only indivisible group focused on doing so on a local level. So here's your agenda for today. These are the things that I plan to go over. Just give you a rough blow-by-blow of the 2024 legislative session. Try to help you make sense of the deluge of insensible Christian nationalist bills. So, they don't make sense, but we try. Go over some ways to help you make your voices heard, because that is what we are all about at CEBV. And then I will take questions. So feel free to drop those in the chat as I'm going along, label them ask, and then I will try to answer them as I go along. And if that's not possible, I will answer them at the end. So next slide. This is
Real quick, I just want to, I was going to say something about just like, let me know when you need to switch, and I will be monitoring the chat. That's what I was going to say. So you don't have to worry about it. I'll do it for you. All right.
Okay, so when I say next slide, that's when yep, there it is. So this is a representation here of the bill to law process, and I steadfastly maintain that there is a SpongeBob meme for every occasion. And in this case, as you can see with Patrick trying to shove the giant pumpkin through the tiny funnel into SpongeBob's mouth, that is a perfect encapsulation of our legislative process. We have almost 1,800 bills that were introduced this session. We have passed the first bill deadline now, so about 55% of those are dead in their current form. But these are all the steps that a bill has to go through in order to become law. And I would remind you that Republicans hold the barest of majorities, a 1-vote margin in each chamber, but that means that they get to decide everything. They decide leadership, and leadership decides which bills to assign to a committee. They decide committee chairs. Committee chairs decide whether to put bills on agenda and whether to bring them up for the vote. All the committees have Republican majorities. So when the committee votes, it's all decided that way. And then they have, of course, the majority. So when Republican leadership decides to bring the bill to the floor, a bill can pass along party lines. And then it does the whole, exact same thing in the opposite chamber. And this may be probably review for all of you, but I go over this because the tip of the spear there at the very end is the governor, which we now have a Democratic governor. So that aspect of divided government has been very interesting to watch. And what we are seeing is many bills have gone through the process along party lines, and then sort of run into the brick wall that is Katie Hobbs's veto stamp. And we're seeing a lot of that again this session. So next slide. Here are some ways that you can advocate in the legislative process. And we call this the Kill Bill Guide. And I know it's a lot to look at, but it is an encapsulation of where you can weigh in as a private citizen on the legislative process. So the times that are best are when a bill is on a committee agenda, but has not yet been heard in committee. So there's about a 1-week period there. And if you read CEBV's weekly report, we lay those all out for you. And that is an opportunity where it says comment with RTS. RTS is Arizona's request to speak system, and I'll go over that a little bit later. There are also great times for you to call your legislators, call legislative leadership. Those are laid out, and you can find this slide on CEBV's website. But there are a couple of parliamentary maneuvers that our lawmakers use to try and speed their bills through the process. One is called fast tracking, which is a pair of identical bills moving simultaneously through House and Senate. And that is used to short circuit the opportunity for public comment. Often those two bills will be heard in the same week. So it's like, boom, put it both in committee, it's over before you know what happened, and then it becomes very difficult to weigh in. And the other parliamentary maneuver that they use is a striker or a strike everything amendment. We're just really hitting striker season now because we've passed the first bill deadline. So this is a way to short circuit parts of the committee hearing process, circumvent chairs that might not want to hear your ideas, go around public comment, resurrect dead ideas. So those are gut and replace amendments that don't even have to be related to the original bill. They just, they use the bill as an eggshell, blow out all the contents, put in new contents, keep it moving. So those are some things that we're going to be watching for, particularly now as session advances. Next slide.
Can I ask a quick question? And I don't even know if you'd be able to answer it, but I do know that, the Satanic Temple really, and I can't say this enough, the way that the Satanic Temple is able to mobilize its members, they're very passionate about their religion. And so I think a lot of folks are probably on this call too. Do you think there's any likelihood that the 1279 bill banning, which, hold on, can I just say that I love how Jake Hoffman added the word erections to it? He wants to ban erections of the Satanic Temple, anything. And even Senator Sundaration yesterday said something about, I know, what did she say? Because I wrote it down. It was so good. She said
Something like the sponsor's not a fan of erections.
I know the sponsor isn't a fan of erections, but I still have to vote nay. So
Yeah.
like, do you think that one will come back?
So I will get to, I have a slide, individual bill. And I had fun making memes for those, you will see.
Excellent.
But lots and lots and lots of bills this year. So it's been sort of like drinking from a fire hose. But I just let's take a moment and pour one out for all the good bills that have died. But I'm going to start off with the 10 Commandments bill. And here we have Charlton Heston bringing his the word of God down from the mountain, and that's great for a movie theater, fine, great, sure, whatever. Please don't try to teach it to my children in their public schools. If I want them to learn that aspect of the Christian religion, I will put them in Sunday school. It should not be taught in public schools. But this is pervasive. This is not just Arizona. Last year, a similar bill failed in Texas. This year, we've seen similar bills proposed in Georgia and Utah. And really, it is religious groups trying to push the envelope. Well, we have a new Supreme Court. Let's see how far states can go in shoving this all down people's throats. So the proponents are using words like law and order, moral values, religious freedom, which are all Christian nationalist dog whistles. Anthony Kern did come right out and say the quiet part out loud this week, where he said he wants to stop the progressive slide of our kids by reinstituting the 10 Commandments into public schools. But to quote Americans United for Separation of Church and State, forcing public schools to display the 10 Commandments is part of the Christian nationalist crusade to compel all of us to live by their beliefs. And that, friends and neighbors, is unconstitutional. The Senate Rules Committee has told them as much. It's a pet peeve of mine, when their attorneys that they pay to tell them these things, flag bills for them, and are like, hey, yo, this is unconstitutional, and they just pass it anyway. That's a big, big pet peeve of mine. But this bill passed the Senate on party lines yesterday, and it is now awaiting House action. So the next step will be a House first reading and committee assignment, and then we'll see it go through committee, and then we'll see it go to the floor. And if it passes through the House, then Governor Katie Hobbs gets to stamp it with her veto stamp.
I personally would like to see an amendment added to this bill that would ban the erection of any religious display that acknowledges the existence of Satan. That seems logical. Let's do that.
Yeah. And just, the short titles, that's staff who decides those. So I think that was probably a typo, but you can never be sure.
And Ian says all bills should really ban erection just as a matter of course now. Absolutely. Okay, go ahead, Melinda.
So then we have the Satanic Panic bill. And if you are of a certain age, as I am, and I know Jeannie is, you will remember the 1980s era hysteria over Satanism and the church lady on Saturday Night Live, and Dungeons and Dragons being vilified for teaching our children to worship the Antichrist and all kinds of nonsense. And this is reminiscent of that, frankly. It's hysterical, it's nonsensical, but it would ban so-called satanic displays on government property. And, folks started pushing back on the sponsor, our own Jake from Troll Farm Hoffman, who, was asked, well, what about Sparky the Sun Devil from ASU? What about Greenway High School and the Greenway Demons? Like, are they going to have to change their mascots? Are we going to have to, yeet Sparky across the border? What gives? And he said that was ridiculous. But, really, in only 25 words, this bill violates 3 separate First Amendment clauses. prohibiting the government from establishing a religion, barring government interference with the free exercise of religion, and guaranteeing the right to free speech. So this is another one that the intent is just unconstitutional. Now, it was voted down yesterday on the Senate floors. Senators Mesnard and Bennett both voted no and cited constitutional issues. I do suspect that this will be brought back up on reconsideration. So that is something that they can do. That's another parliamentary move, that they're given 14 days to reconsider a bill. Then they have those 14 days to twist arms behind the scenes, but and nothing is ever dead until the legislature adjourns. But I would say that Senators Bennett and Mesnard are not particularly liberal folks. So
do you think that was because of the constitutionality of it?
They both referenced that in their floor speeches. And, they heard what their own Senate rule attorneys had to say. They get those memos. Neither of them sits on the Senate Rules Committee, but that sort of thing is not kept a secret. And I mean, I think you reach a point where certain bills are a bridge too far, even for some of your right-wing folks, that, hey, this is really just a little too bonkers, even for me.
Mm-hmm.
So next slide.
That's the right one, right? Okay, yes, okay, go ahead, sorry.
So then we've got 1628. This is a bill that would remove any reference to gender in Arizona law and replace it with a narrow and inflexible definition of biological sex. So what this does effectively is it eliminates any legal recognition of transgender people. And if you look at the bill, it never actually uses the word transgender, which I believe is by design. So this is part of a systematic pattern of attacks on trans people and on LGBTQ people in general across the country. And there have been over 100 anti-trans bills passed, introduced across the nation. And the word transgender very rarely appears in those bills. And, if you name a thing, it's interesting. If you name a thing, then you're acknowledging it, and they would rather erase it. So they're pretending that this is just about, supporting women, but it's being pushed by the Christian Nationalist Center for Arizona Policy. I have strong feelings about Ms. Kathy Herod, as I know that many of you do. Another aspect of this bill is Title IX, so federal law, forbidding sex-based discrimination in school. And that includes, courts have said that includes sexual orientation and gender identity. So if this bill were passed, it would put schools in the position of choosing, like, what do I do? Do I violate this state law, or do I lose federal funding? And that's a position, just putting aside the merits of this bill, which are none, that we really don't want our public schools to be in. So this did pass the Senate yesterday on party lines, and it's now awaiting House action. But this is another one that is headed straight for Governor Katie Hobbs's veto stamp.
And I want to just, celebrate the words coming from Senator Ana Hernandez, who recently announced that she's going to be running for Phoenix City Council, where she feels like she might actually be able to get some work done, because she said this is such BS, because, if these folks really cared about women, they would be focused on bills about pay equity, about the ERA, about, reproductive justice, about affordable childcare, so I feel like the facade is so, like, it's not even there anymore. Like, it's so clear that they don't care about women or children or any vulnerable communities, but they do this thing where it's just gaslighting at its finest. If you've ever known a narcissist, the entire GOP seem like they're a bunch of narcissists.
The veneer is paper thin, and bills like this are really about control. So speaking of control, so here we have your blanket conspiracy bill. And you had asked me to focus on one of these. I think it was Lindsay who sent me the list, but there are actually 3 of these, and they are all the same, except that 2 of them are ballot referrals. And I'll get into on the next slide what exactly that means. But this is a bill, and it's really hard for me to talk about this one with a straight face. Because it is a laundry list of culture war conspiracy theories. So if you've ever wondered what the MAGA folks are up to, just read this bill. So reducing meat or dairy consumption or production, eating bugs, walking or biking more, God forbid any of us should do that. Taking public transit, reducing air travel, limiting the number of articles of clothing a person can buy or own. Where is that happening, I ask you? Recycling drinking water. There's this whole conspiracy theory about drinking poop water. Don't get me started. And it goes on and on and on. This list goes on and on and on. But one of the things that's flagged is furthering Marxist ideologies. So, we're right back to the 1950s, McCarthy era witch hunt, which, that Marxist ideologies line alone. And this bill would ban Arizona, its cities and counties, and its state universities and community colleges from spending public funds to promote any of these. So the Marxist ideologies line alone could usher in a McCarthy level witch hunt in our public schools. And there's a move overall in the extreme right wing of our country to label anything that they don't like as Marxist or communist. And this is just one more example of that. So SB 1195, of course, is headed for Governor Hobbs's veto stamp, just like the other bills that I just discussed. But then there are also a pair of ballot referrals. So ballot referrals circumvent the governor if every senator and every representative that is a Republican votes for them, they will be on your November ballot. Governor Hobbs has no say. So those are dangerous. These are dangerous, and CEBV is tracking 30 ballot referrals that are still alive. If you would go to the next slide, Jeannie. So we've already got 4 on our November ballot that lawmakers passed last session. And if you count the Prop 400 extension, the transportation extension, then we've got 5. Our last ballot, our midterm ballot in 2022, we had 8 total legislative referrals. That seemed like a lot at the time. It felt like a lot, but 30 is just like, we're already looking at a ballot that is so long that it's going to have 2 cards, 2 pieces of paper. And then when you add 30 ballot referrals potentially to that, you're looking at depressing down ballot voting, sinking legitimate measures like the Prop 400 extension and other things that actually belong on our ballot. And I look at this and I'm like, what are they thinking? Like, what is wrong with these people? But I think it's a fear of reproductive rights. So, and Jeannie, I can see you trying to get a word in edgewise, so I'm going to shut up and let you do that.
So that is exactly what it's about. This is about exhausting and confusing the voters. The additional referrals that are going to be coming are going to cause what some people are estimating a $2 million shortfall in printing the informational booklets that go out during elections. So the taxpayers, because of these, I can't get my way, so I'm going to create a bunch of referrals, is going to cost the taxpayers an additional $2 million. And yes, I do believe that it is entirely to exhaust and confuse and scare people from voting from any initiatives, right? Like, I don't even think that they would care if their initiatives failed as long as the abortion one does.
Yeah, well, they could sink a lot of legitimate, including they could depress their own legislative turnout. Which, I'm not sure that they care. I'm not sure that they're thinking that far ahead. So typically in the waning days of even numbered years, a few folks in legislative leadership get together in a room and they look at everything that's on the table as far as ballot referrals, and they go, which of these do we actually want to see hit the ballot, and which of them can we hold for another cycle? Like, what's the most important here? And I am pretty sure that that process did not happen last year, and I'm still waiting to see it happen this year. But I am hoping that saner heads will prevail. If that happens, it'll probably happen over on the House side, because Warren Peterson is many things, but that is just not a good description for him. We shall see. We shall see. But the CEBV Weekly has started putting ballot referrals up at the top of the weekly in their own section when they are moving, because these are dangerous, folks. Like, if you only are able to take very limited actions every week, when you look at that weekly, please focus on your ballot referrals and be calling your state senator, be calling your state representatives. We do not want our ballots cluttered up with an additional 30 referrals. That is just crazy talk. We just don't need it. So moving on, next slide. Speaking of ballot referrals, Jeannie and I were talking about this one before you all got on. This is Senator Kavanaugh's bathroom bill from last session that Governor Hobbs vetoed, recycled as a ballot referral. So voters would get the chance to tell kids where they can and cannot pee at school. Don't get me started. Poll after poll after poll shows that voters, they don't give two craps, pun definitely intended, where kids use the bathroom. And what's more, they are increasingly fed up with the culture war BS. Voters do not want to have to think about their state government on an everyday level. Like, I have heard this at doors. I just want to vote for somebody who's sane and not think about you for 2 years. Like, please do not make me think about you every day. Now, this was scheduled for a Senate floor vote on Wednesday, but they held it. And that can mean a couple of things. That can mean it doesn't have the votes. That can mean that a floor amendment is coming. So we don't know, but it's been rescheduled for Monday. If they hold it again, that's a real good indication that it doesn't have the votes. So this is one of those that I'm watching. It has to get out of the Senate and through a House committee by the middle of March. So the clock is ticking, and hopefully the clock will run out on this one. If you want to go to the next slide. So think of this as your quiver of arrows when it comes to citizen engagement and using your voice to advocate for the issues that you believe in. And you'll see right in the middle there, that green tile is request to speak, RTS. So that's a big part, because not only is it a powerful tool on its own, but it also helps drive other things too, like media attention, lawmaker meetings, business involvement. Of course, there are always calls, emails, direct action, letters to the editor. But RTS we call the gateway drug to activism. And if you do not have a request to speak account, we can help you get one. Next slide. So forgive me if I'm preaching to the choir or going over things that you already know, but I really want to make sure that everybody here on this call has an RTS account. It's an online tool that can let you give your lawmakers feedback on their bills. You do not have to actually speak, as the name implies. You can just give it a thumbs up or thumbs down from your couch and leave comments. Would encourage you to make sure that those comments are something that you would be comfortable being, printed in the newspaper, for example, because it is a public record. But this is a very, very, very powerful tool. Our lawmakers absolutely pay attention to it. They sometimes read the comments directly into the record in committee or on the floor. journalists watch this, and I have seen on contentious bills the RTS balance for and against lifted up in the news article. 800 people opposed this bill in RTS, and only 3 of them were for, and they're all lobbyists. Like that is very powerful stuff. So you can get an RTS account from CEBV's website. We're happy to go down to the Capitol and do that for you.
I do want to take a minute here because I know we have some folks who asked to set up RTS, and the tricky part with that for us is for many of you, you set it up with a password already. So just know that I'll be getting down to the Capitol later on. I do have a quick question that was up in the chat, and that was, and I don't know if you can even answer this, Melinda, but what is your estimate on abortion access? Like, do you think that they're going to be able to get the signatures to get on the ballot?
I do, absolutely. So they've already hit 250,000, which was their halfway point. So they are on track to reach the number of signatures. And I've heard actually that they have upped their goal to what feels like an almost absurd number, which is 800,000. But that would make quite a statement of like, yeah, we're not kidding around here. Like, Arizonans want this, and it would make it very, very hard to challenge it off the ballot in a legal fight. So I am expecting that to hit the ballot.
And then last question, because you said that our legislators do look at this, right? But I also wonder, does the governor's office look at RTS and take a look at how many people are signed up?
Oh, absolutely. They absolutely do. And I have a good relationship with the governor's legislative staff. And I know that they consider the volume of comments and just the numbers. And part of our rationale, part of our goal with using the request to speak system is to sort of grease that path for these really awful bills and demonstrate how the public feels about them so that they are real easy to veto.
Are we on to the next slide?
Yes, please.
Okay, sorry about that.
No worries. So we encourage you to advocate for the issues that you believe in, of course. We have all kinds of ways in which you can do that. Not only can you take an RTS training where you can learn to use RTS to weigh in on bills. We have a training next week. We also have regular conversations with folks who have various perspectives to share. So some of those names are on this slide. We do record those conversations. You can watch them all on our YouTube channel. We have the persuasion toolbox, which will help you break through and have an honest discussion with somebody and change hearts and minds. We also have our weekly CEBV happy hour on Sunday afternoons. And I'm going to drop that link tree into the chat. It's all linked right there. But really, however you are most comfortable engaging, there is a way linked from that link tree for you to do that. And I would encourage you all to click through and take one additional action today, just because this is so bonkers. Like, we all really need to do that. Go ahead.
I do have a couple. Okay, so Jay is asking how are ballot measures ordered on the actual ballot. Can you answer that, Melinda?
So they are numerical. There are props, 100s, 200s, and 300s. And 300s are referendums. But also there can be some legislative referrals, particularly county level ones. 100s, I believe, tend to be citizen initiatives. What we saw with the last ballot cycle was that the legislative referrals were a mix between 100 and 300. So I am not sure, to be honest, if they are ordered in the order that they were voted, to the ballot, which I suspect is the actual case, or how that works.
There's another question here coming from, I think it's pronounced probably Mary Jean or Mary Jeannie. She asks, how does one see RTS comments once the bill is no longer in committee?
So that they have made that a little more difficult. You can only see comments now for people who have said that they will speak in person, yes, or if necessary. But you go over to the request to speak side and you view the committee agendas, and then you click the button view past agendas, and then you can hit that arrow to pop down a bill, and you can see who registered to speak and whether they made any comments.
I did notice that it was different this year, but I couldn't determine exactly what it was that was different. I really hope, honestly, because there's a lot of talk about RTS and the difficulty of trying to get on when you're doing it remotely. I mean, it's such a simple thing to allow people to register. I mean, Christ's sake, you know, I pay for everything online these days. I mean, all I have to do is like swipe a little thing to buy something at Amazon, which is dangerous for me. You know what I mean? Like, I really hope that when we get either parity or a majority, that we can simplify the process of democracy for our citizens in the state. It's very frustrating. Few comments here. Tanya Francis was actually at the 1279 committee hearing. And the way, I just want to point out, like, Tanya, thank you so much for showing up that day, because the way Jake Hoffman treated you, he actually called her disingenuous. Like, he tried so hard to trip this woman up. I was so angry about it. And again, I think everybody should watch the clip. I know that Eric from Secular AZ clipped the 30 minutes where they discussed it, but the treatment of those folks and the way that Hoffman punches down, I can't express it enough. I think everybody in the state should watch that Senate Government Committee, and I guarantee they'll never vote for any of those people ever again. And if they work the regular...
universally known to you, is that the comment or the conversation that you're referencing?
Yes, like, and he's, yeah, she was doing her best to explain why it was so important for her. And he kept, and he could see, because first of all, I do this stuff all the time. You do this stuff all the time, right? Like, it's different for us to be able to get in these spaces and to talk to people and to put on our armor, or say like a Marilyn Rodriguez, who's a lobbyist down there who constantly gets attacked. But for somebody who's driving all the way up from Tucson, and the way he punched down at her, yeah, it was just despicable. And he ended by saying, I'm tired of these disingenuous comments or something like that. At which point Senator Mendez was like, point of order. And he was like, nope, we're moving on. So thanks for being here, Tanya. I appreciate you. And I hope you continue to go back. And if you want to get better about speaking, and this isn't like saying anything about your speaking abilities, it's really just none of us are great at it until we have experience with it. But CEBV does a happy hour every Sunday, and they provide examples of people getting up there, voices shaking, but making really powerful statements. So I suggest that everybody, and not just Tanya, sign up for that. Ian Hamp is saying it's numerical and the first number depends on the kind of referral it is, but I forget what that means. Okay, I think the legislative ones are all starting with 1. Jude says 200s are citizen initiatives, Prop 208, if you think about that, I guess. Ian says you will need people who want democracy to exist in this country before we can have nice things, but I have hope that will be this year. Same. Let's see. Jude says it takes more navigating to find all comments. Mostly only yes speakers' comments show on the agenda screen. Isn't that a trip? Talk about manipulation of democracy. But hey, at CPAC, they opened up the whole entire conference this week by saying, we're here to get rid of democracy. Words I never thought would be uttered in the United States of America, but this is where we are. Worst timeline ever. Tanya said, I couldn't say anything. I knew whatever I was to bring up would be knocked down. You're absolutely right. They're despicable. I'm sure that Lindsay's probably already linked the YouTube. Janice says Tanya kicked ass up there. She did. She stood her ground so well. Hoffman was awful to all the Satanists. He absolutely was. You can see the live proceedings there. Let's see. Bonnie, sorry, rapid fire. I got to catch up. Bonnie says the QAnon shaman Jacob Chansley spoke on the Senate Appropriations Committee on Bill 1480, because of course he did. Worst timeline ever. Yes, I agree, Mars. Tanya did do a great job remaining calm. She says, Tanya says it makes her even more determined. Yes. So hopefully on Sunday, you'll come to the happy hour, Tanya, and they'll help you out. Janice says, Hoffman worked so hard at being insulting and dismissive. Actually, I don't think he has to work hard at that. I wonder what his home life is, his poor wife. his poor wife. I can only imagine all the different levels of abuse that are happening there. Let's see. Mars says, I'm just going to plug my awesome Toastmasters Club for a great supportive environment to improve public speaking and self-confidence. My club is LGBTQ friendly. It's the Melrose Toastmasters. Thanks for that suggestion. That's fantastic. Okay, back to you, Melinda.
All right. So on the subject of testimony, I want to make sure everybody knows that the first time that I testified in committee, my heart was pounding so hard, my smartwatch gave me workout points. And like, I was just standing there talking. I was absolutely not working out, but it can be terrifying. It can be, but it is a muscle, and the more you exercise it, the easier it gets. We do have testimony training materials linked from our link tree. And I would just reference this slide. It does feel like banging your head against a brick wall sometimes. You know, Jake Hoffman is one of those folks that you just know. Nobody has ever told that man no in his life. And it gives me great pleasure to think about him being in the minority, because I think that experience would be good for him. It would be a growing experience for him.
I bet you they'll quit. Honestly, I was actually texting a legislator the other day, and I feel like some of these people, because they've been in power for so long and are so used to getting their way. I mean, think about it. So many of these men, if you look at their profiles, what do they lead with? Christian father, man of God, whatever. But these bro flakes will not be able to handle having to answer. I mean, look at how they're behaving with Governor Hobbs. It is despicable. So I have a feeling that when they no longer have the power, like Kavanaugh, he's not going to want to hang out there. Kern, they'll be done. But thankfully, Kern's going to be out next. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry, Melinda.
Anyway, it's a reason to tell your story. You know, lawmakers can and will argue or try to argue with your facts all day long. They believe that they are entitled to their own facts and that your facts are not facts, and they will pick a bone with your facts all day long. But what they cannot argue with is your personal story, your personal experience. This happened to me, and that is why I am here. They cannot argue with that. And when we start advocating for good public policy, we are all working to take apart that brick wall. And the importance of that cannot be overstated. And Jeannie, I know you have used this phrase that they are loud, but we are many. And that is absolutely 100% true. And we have to just organize, not panic, but organize. If you want to go to the next slide, these are some ways that you can get a hold of us. I already referenced our link tree. Do read our Substack every week. Do follow us on Twitter and Threads. And if you ever need anything, of course, we're just an email away. So.
Wow. So fantastic. Can I ask, how long has CEBV been in existence here in Arizona?
So we formed in January 2017. I, like many others, was activated in the days following the election of Donald Trump. I don't know what I'm going to do, I said, but I got to do something. And I kept showing up until I figured it out. Figured that state level politics was a great place to be active, because you can call your US senator all day long and maybe never get through, but state senator is very accessible. And so many decisions that affect our daily lives are made on a state level. Started following bills at the legislature and just never looked back.
And how, I know your group works on this all the time, but it's true, right? After 2016, that's where we saw this explosion of indivisibles and resistors, right? Like Judy Schwiebert talks about that as part of her origin story as a legislator, how she and a bunch of friends who were in a book club were like, holy crap, the Hillary Clinton just lost, and now we have this guy as our president. And it grew in just a couple of years to like thousands of members. But I guess my question is, how do we get the average, Joe six-pack to realize that Joe Biden has nothing to do with gas prices or the fact that their tax returns this year when they file are like, whoa, we're not getting as much as we normally do. Joe Biden, how do we how do we get that information to people? You guys have been doing this since 2017, and the explosion not only of folks who show up at your weekly happy hours, but just, you know, all of you who are working so actively, like you're doing all the best that you can. And I know your numbers are growing, but how do we tell like our angry uncle at the Thanksgiving table, like, hey, Joe Biden doesn't decide gas prices?
Well, your angry uncle and your low information voter are two different strategies. I would definitely suggest that you come to one of our persuasion trainings, or go to our link tree and look through the persuasion toolbox. But really, it's conversations, it's voter contact. This stuff is like a train wreck. Once you see it, you cannot look away. And I will share, I had what is now, looking back, was such an embarrassing interaction with a journalist where I went to my first Senate committee hearing and I went home and I emailed a journalist and I was like, you wouldn't believe what happened at this committee hearing. Like, you guys got to follow this stuff. And she was so polite and nice, but like, haha, we've been following this for years. Like, welcome to the party.
Yeah,
But
it's, yeah.
it hits you, it hits you over the head like a frying pan. And the more people that can have that wake up call, the better. And so it really just comes down to voter contact, to talking with people, friends, neighbors, coworkers. You know, if you go to a church like the Unitarian congregation, you know, talking to those folks, you know, anybody that you can talk to, knocking doors, making phone calls, like Ian says, neighbor to neighbor, and spreading the word.
A couple of love bombs coming in your way. I love CEBV. This is from Lisa. Hi, Lisa. Even if I cannot always follow up and follow through with the work, your faithfulness to this work is invaluable. Thank you, Melinda, to you and your entire team. Andrew is asking, speaking of Trump, what are you doing to make sure he doesn't get elected? I'm guessing, Melinda, that's not your focus for CEBV.
So what my answer to that would be, trickle down economics is a myth. Trickle up voting is very real. And if you can show somebody their vote has an impact on a local level, and you know, vote for, you know, your city council member, vote for your state representative, vote for this ballot proposition, start at the bottom, then by the time they hit the top, it's just gravy. And they are going to make that right choice when they get up there.
Right on. Okay, this one is coming from Jacqueline. Great point. I'm not sure what she's referencing here, but she says we need to remind everyone that the local and state elections have far more influence on our daily lives than federal for most part. And it can be frustrating sometimes because, you know, last week I had the Willow Home tour. Central Phoenix, most people are like, oh my gosh, where do I sign? Yes, Christian nationalism is the biggest threat to our democracy. But of course, and again, no offense to the white guys here, but there were a couple of old white men who needed to tell me that all of our founding fathers were evangelical Christians, inaccurately, but that's what they had to tell me. And so, like, you know, there were even people there who were trying to say, actually, that's not how any of this works, but they are unconvinced and they're bold in their ignorance. And so it you know, you got to find your audience where you might be able to get a wedge in, I guess. Martha says, thanks for a great program. RTS is great and easy to use. Well, if you work with CEBV, it is. Yes, for sure. Nectaire, who was also there when 1279 was being heard, says, yes, Jude, that's fun stuff and good practice for starting conversations as well. I've done both parties and phones and doors. Anyone wants a buddy, they can come out with me to shadow for a bit in Tucson. Volunteers for canvassing get opportunities to talk with the candidates too occasionally. That's absolutely right. David, again, compliments, love bombs. Melinda, you're doing amazing work. Thank you for being so diligent. Tanya says, I appreciate this so much. Very informative and helpful. And neighbor to neighbor. Oh yes, Mars, thank you so much for bringing this up. And Mars is with Humanist Society of Greater Phoenix, also with Freedom from Religion Foundation, on February 27th at 4 p.m. We are going to, not we, just like secular folks. It's not, Mars is doing most of the organizing. They are getting people together and they're going to watch God and Country, the new Rob Reiner film, at Harkin Shea on February 27th at 4 p.m. Mars, I haven't looked to see if you have put that on our secular calendar, but if you have not, please do. That would be fantastic. Jude Simon says, if interested and available, being a poll worker, and then she dropped a link there. And that's that. And then we got a couple other links down there, and that's it. So it is 12:52. Let's see. I had a question there. I can't think of it. It had something to do with the election. Yeah, I know. Now I can't remember. So anyway, as we do on these Friday discussions, and I'm sure you've maybe seen them before, hopefully, because this is heavy, like especially crossover week. I hate crossover week. I hate it. I hate the entire legislative session. And like you, I feel like my heart rate, I can feel my heart rate increasing just sitting here and watching from home. You know what I mean? So it's a difficult and taxing time. And when we get together, because Fridays, there's no legislative action happening, for the most part. So we all just sit in our in our meetings, our coalition meetings, and we all look like we've just been like, in the trenches and mustard gassed. So it's tough to maintain positivity.
I would disagree with that, actually.
Okay, let's hear it.
My antidote for despair is action. And on Fridays, I'm writing your legislative weekly. Like, these are the things that we can do. And I do believe, that scene in Finding Nemo where Nemo's like, we have, they're all in the net and he's like, we can fight this. And they all start swimming down. There are enough of us that we have that power. And, without all of you, like the folks on this call, my words have no power. But what gives us power is our sheer number. And like I said, the antidote to despair for me is action.
I think that is just about the best kind of little bit of hope that we could take with us and carry into the weekend. I also know that there are so many great events this weekend happening where you've got good candidates from school board.
One more thing, you mentioned candidates. When life gives you lemons, use them to make a new legislature. Like, if you live in 2, 4, 9, 13, 16, 17, 23, 27, if those are your legislative districts, you are all set. Go volunteer for your candidates. If you are in a different district, find your nearest district out of the numbers that I just mentioned and go help. Because those 8 districts are where control of the legislature is going to be decided, and that is how we make a difference.
Agreed. Yeah. And honestly, I mean, no offense to those folks who step up and run for Congress, Senate, or whatever, but focus on the people that are in your own backyard, because fundraising is tough. And if you find a candidate legislatively or at your school board or city council, help them out, whether you can write a check or whether you can knock on doors. That's what we need right now. And I agree that the number one focus for change in the state of Arizona is going to be flipping the legislature. Like, we've already seen the magical power of having a Democratic governor, but we've also now seen them regroup and adjust so that they're blasting us with all of these ballot referrals. So it's really, really important to stay engaged, and especially at the local level.
I don't think it's going to work out for them the way they think it will.
I don't think so either. When you disregard the opinion and the autonomy of half of the population, that half of the population isn't going to be happy, right? So Melinda, are there any that you know of volunteer opportunities maybe happening this weekend? I'm sorry, I should have asked you that first, but like, is your organization, or do you know of another organization that's maybe put something together for this weekend?
So my go-to there is always going to be Save Our Schools Arizona. They're one of the few organizations that's got organizers out in the field all the time. So one of the things that I do not understand about the progressive so-called machine is, like, we build it all up, we have an election, we fire everybody, and then we start over again a year later. I don't understand that. I never have. So deep canvassing and conversations in our communities are where it's at. So go to sosarizona.org/volunteer or go to their Facebook page, and I know they're out knocking doors this weekend.
Excellent. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Melinda. I appreciate you and CEBV and SOS and all the work that y'all do. And so hopefully today everyone who's on this call will really take it to heart and find some kind of action that you can do up until, what is election day this year? November what?
I think it's November 8th.
I think you're right, because that was
Not
the
that
first thing I
anyone's
went.
counting, right?
Oh my God. And then after that, all I know is that I'm going to take a very long nap or take a very long camping trip if I can, because I just need to get away regardless of the outcome. So anyway, I hope everybody finds their joy and their hope this weekend. And again, thanks, Melinda Merkel Iyer. We appreciate you beyond measure.
Well, I
Have a great,
appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
all right. Have a great weekend. Take care.